So I'd like to dive into a little bit more about the learning technology that's supporting all of this, and really, how is it taking things from employee training to a profit center, and are our learning tech stacks prepared for this type of scenario? So, Fiona, from an analyst perspective, where is the market in terms of delivering extended enterprise training and making it a profit center?
That's two questions. So let's talk about the market itself and the technology, and then we'll come to the profit center in a minute. But from the technology perspective, what I've been seeing is that because extended enterprise has become so important in the market out there, that a lot of the vendors who have been doing internal training have now realized that there is a need for that external training as well. Although there are some that have been there forever. Because there have already been for many, many years the need to be selling, it could be product training or whatever, to do that online. But we've seen that expand. I can also see that there is quite a difference in sophistication in those vendors, those vendor products. Now, if those of you that know Fosway will know that we have a benchmark tool, the 9 Grid, and the Learning Systems 9 Grid is the one that I'm responsible for. And there are almost 50 products on there, vendors on there. They're either as squares or they're as circles. Now, if they're squares, that means they're specialists. If they're circles, that means they're suites. But unfortunately, there's no way of knowing which one of those can do extended enterprise and whether they can do it well. So there's one on there that is a specialist, and it is explained in the report that they're a specialist in extended enterprise. In other words, all they do is the external. But the suites, more and more of them are starting to pick up on being able to deliver both internal and external training. But they, as I say, they do it to a greater or lesser extent. Some of them have been experienced in this for a long time, and they're probably their clientele is 50-50, whether that's internal or external. Internal, I'm talking about the L&D space, under HR, and this is something that's quite difficult for the buyers. Now, if we were on a webinar, I could ask you, where do you come from? Are you L&D or are you external? But we're a podcast, and so I can't ask that question. But there are probably those of you out there that are not part of the L&D department. So where are you? And it could be you're in the IT department, you're in operations, you're in marketing, you're in sales. There's a whole load of buyers looking for technology, and the vendors are attempting to get to you, and that can be difficult. It's easy for the internal. We go for the learning department, but for the external, that's quite difficult. And so that's where the technology is going, profit center. Now, so to come back to your question, Jennifer, so quite a number of organizations have already been set up as a profit center. And I think a lot of those that are delivering the training with trainers then probably set up to sell that training alongside the product and set up as a profit center. But there are others that isn't the case. But there's quite a few that are wanting to go there, and they're not yet sophisticated or mature enough to do that, either as a part of the organization, or they don't have the technology, the capability to do it yet. So, but I think it's the direction of travel. There are a lot more wanting to be profit centers, and there are those that have been profit centers for quite some time.
Great, thank you, Fiona.
Okay.
Stefan, You alluded earlier to a tech stack that is specifically built for the needs of extended enterprise learning, and that technology is different. So, for one or the other, and again, we're talking that internal audience versus external audience. So, can you tell us more about that?
Yes, sure. That's a great question. So first of all, we can see very diverse situation. If you compare, the training offered by the United Nations in some countries, and they are doing it for free. It's not for profit. It's going to be very different than a training organization with an entrepreneur. He has founded his company, and he clearly have a for-profit mission. So I think that one criteria, one subject that is extremely important is that is it for profit or not for profit. Second, when you're talking about Boeing or Airbus, and they will train United Airlines, American Airlines, Air France, KLM, British Airways, they are not going to mix all their population. Why? Because the configuration of the aircraft is maybe not the same. Maybe because some of those companies, compete against each other. So they will organize private session, and that's a very big driver. The session is private. It's for one airline only, and we're not going to mix the population. But if you're a training business and you're, training on how to use Excel spreadsheet, for beginners, you may mix someone from American Airlines with Citibank and whatever. It's not a problem. So it's called open session or public session. So that's a very big driver. Those use cases exist very frequently. So it should be a driver when you choose, obviously, your technology. And obviously, if you're a software company selling finance system, you will be more in a B2B business model. But if you're the Red Cross and you have to train the entire population about, how you can react if you see someone who's in trouble, and it's going to be really B2C. So are you more in a B2B business model with ordering process, and the way you manage the process will be completely different than a Red Cross that in a B2C business model. So I think it's three different drivers. With these three examples, we see that the consequence and the structure of the learning stack may be different. So I would say first that extending enterprise requires a specific tech stack because you're managing not anymore employee education, but client education, partner education, franchisee education. Some, as Fiona was saying, but she knows more than me, some learning management system will be very strong on the extended enterprise use case, while some other will be very strong on employee education. But, not everyone is at the same maturity level, but it may be different. So the positioning, and the experience and expertise may be different between the vendor. Second, I would say that extended enterprise requires specific connectivity. If we're talking about the clients, we need to connect with the CRM. If we're talking about a for-profit or a not-for-profit business model, you need a website, Your offer has to be publicly available or privately available just to your partner. So it may be a private, and we're not just talking about the learner, we're talking about the clients, the partners, and so it may be visible, the offer that you have may be, visible differently if you sell a product in Portugal, if you sell a product in UK, it's different currency, or if you sell to a B2B, in a B2B or B2C business model, are you selling more private classes, public classes? And also you need to connect with a finance system for the invoicing, for the profitability. So connectivity is different. We're not talking about the traditional connection with an HRIS to obtain the list of the employees. Another point is that extending enterprise requires specific feature. Obviously, we discussed about as we're talking about training today more than e-learning, it's important to have the capabilities like scheduling the classes, assigning the resource, managing the cost, managing the availability of the trainer, managing all the tasks, because you have a lot of complexity. But on the top of those features that you can have on both sides, when you do employee education or client education, you need specific feature for the extending enterprise. It's the ordering process. What's my price list? And I'm selling 1,000 euro, the same course to Portugal, and I don't know, 950 euro to France, and $1,200 to US, and 1,000 pounds to UK, the same exact virtual classroom with different pricing. So ordering process, depending of the product that you sell, depending of the process. Invoicing process should be really specific. When do you need to invoice? At the order? When you sell the seats in the public classes, or it's 50% at the beginning because you sell a private classes, and 50% when it has happened. Also, the way you collaborate with the client can be very different. Is it a B2B relationship or a B2C relationship? And you need to manage the profitability, because it was in your question and in Fiona's answer, for profit or not for profit. You give it for free or not, but you need to know how profitable it is if it's a for-profit business model. And that's a specific feature that you will need. So obviously, at Training Orchestra, from the day one we started, I don't know if I told you that, it was a long time ago, I was very young, Fiona, but we started with a marketplace. It has been our first product. And the marketplace was, we serve L&D and we serve a training business, and they can collaborate all together. So the day one, the first second, we had the training business, the training company, the extended enterprise business model, and the L&D employee education. We had one from the first day. So obviously it was more easy to have one system, but I think that what the COVID has changed is that we're seeing now clients willing to have one system to serve all the training operation, and not having one system for employee education and one system for client or partner education.
Yeah, I am seeing that they do separate, and it depends whether there is that internal conversation that goes on. And I think that's an interesting point. I know I was at an event some time ago where we were talking about extended enterprise, and at one point I kind of asked whoever was speaking was saying, have you spoken to your L&D department? And they said, oh yes, actually last week we did have a conversation. And so sometimes I would say to anybody that's listening, if you are L&D, go looking for those that are trying to sell out to their customers. They're trying to train your customers, but also if you are in that sales department and you are selling products, just check in with the L&D departments, because I think the cross-fertilization, the sharing of expertise, doing things well, as Stefan's already explained and shown, I think that there are different things that you need to focus on when you're selling to your customers, and the issues that there are with currency, with discount codes, there's a whole different set of features there. But there's also, I think there are some that are just maybe starting off. I was actually talking just very recently to another vendor who actually was selling to a hair care product organization. Now they were selling to salons and individual businesses, salons, small. There might only be a few owners, and they might only have a credit card. They might not want to be invoiced. So there might be some that need that instant credit card payment gateway, but there are others that is just a larger company. You would never use a credit card to actually buy the content. But one of the things that I think, because we were talking about different features, I think one of the things that we can see that differentiates whether somebody can sell as only an internal learning system or whether they can cope with external, it's about whether they can keep those external customers separate or not. And there's different ways of doing it. Some are doing it in groups and audiences, but some are doing it in domains, and they're very secure, and they're being able to cross over, as a mistake, you can't kind of do that at all. And you want to keep them separate. And keeping them separate, you might want to brand them differently. So if you are, selling products to one big organization, and to take some of your if you're selling to, I don't know, KLM and British Airways, you might want to keep that branding separate so that they are very different. And also it might be that your administrators, do you want their administrators to be able to add content, or do you want the content just coming from you? I'm thinking about, for example, car manufacturers, where it's very clear how you maintain their particular cars, and therefore the learners or the administrators of those learners will not be able to change any of that. That will be just delivered. But they might need to be able to add new learners on if there's somebody else arrived into the dealership that needs to be able to have access, and the original manufacturer doesn't want to have to deal with all that sort of thing. So it's that kind of access and that kind of functionality that I think is important, alongside all the currency, the taxation policies, and all that kind of thing as well, that is important. So yeah, it's a different product, but a lot of vendors are attempting to do both to a greater or lesser extent. That's what we're seeing anyway as analysts.
So that's great. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. We talked about the tech stack and connectivity, different features, but expanding on features a little bit, Stefan, I'm wondering, are there essential features or capabilities or even questions that you need to be asking, you should be asking your learning system vendors about to differentiate the tech that's needed for extended enterprise training?
Yes, that's, I think that's some important question that may be asked. The first one is the ability, I think, for the learning system to manage the private classes. Usually it's 50% of the training business, so we cannot forget 50% of the business. So the first question would be, how do you manage those private classes, and how do you manage unknown learner? Some learners are not known. Obviously, how do you differentiate partner education versus employee education, franchisee education, or client education? Another question is, how do you manage a for-profit training organization, if you're for-profit or not for-profit? What's so specific that you offer to manage, for example, a for and not for-profit? And how do you connect to the CRM? And what's the experience that we have with that, with the website, with the e-commerce capability, with the marketing automation system? That's very important question, Jennifer.
And I think that it's also, knowing your own business, obviously, and what you are going to be needing, because a lot of what we've mentioned might not be relevant for you, but there are certain things, and it's those very specific use cases you need to be able to describe to those vendors, so that they can say, not just, yes, we tick that box, but they can show you that they can do that, that they are able to demonstrate that they do that and how they do it. Because sometimes things can get lost in translation, and just ticking a box these days isn't good enough. You need to be able to see them and how they actually, what that capability looks like for them. So yeah, I think that's important.